we're gonna go from this to this. So, follow along. Let's see what it takes to put a new set of brakes on this Jeep Cherokee. So this one was purchased as a complete kit. Came with everything, rotor, caliper, pads, and the wheel bearings even. So this was a kind of a all-in-one kit. I won't say where we got it from, but it came with Timken bearings, and you probably won't be able to see on there. Well, maybe you will. Right there's our little Chrysler star. Another good thing is find a set of specifications for all your different nuts, bolts, and whatever, and have that handy so that you can make sure everything is right as you go. One of the reasons we're doing this is because of bad wheel bearing. So if you grab it down here and then also at the top, hopefully you can see that little bit of movement. That is the bad wheel bearing. All right, first thing you want to do, get a jack under it, get the wheel off the ground, and then put it on a jack stand. I always leave the jack under it. I just let the pressure off just a little bit and then take it back up just a pinch. So get it like this, that way you're nice and safe and you don't have to worry about anything falling on you. As soon as the wheel comes off, I like to grab my penetrating oil and usually hit everything that's gonna come apart. This one, we gotta take the brake line off right away because that threads into the caliper. It doesn't have a banjo bolt, and so that's gotta come all the way off so that we can put it back on, because we don't wanna twist the line all up trying to do it. And it's just easier if you take it off, in my opinion. So grab some oil, spray some things. A lot of this stuff we're just replacing, so it's not too big of a deal on this particular one, but take the time to spray it. It does really make things easier. Okay, first thing we're going to take off is the caliper. That is a conventional 6.14 millimeter. Okay, so we zipped out the 14 mils. We're going to take our C-clamp, just compress it enough to where it slides right off, and then have yourself some type of piece of wire. I'm just going to use a zip tie to just kind of hang your caliper up out of the way as we take the rest of the pieces off. Okay, caliper is out of the way, so now we got to take the caliper mount off. That takes one of these. It's like a Torx, but it's an inverted, so it's an E. I don't know if you can see it. It's an E20. Anyway, E20 is the one you're going to need. Mounts right back here on the back. We'll just zip those bolts out, get rid of that old bracket. Bolts out, the whole thing comes right off very easy. Try to leave it all together. That way you can see how everything was put together as far as the hardware kit. I'll get to that in a minute. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the rotor, and that requires a 5 mil Allen wrench. 5 mil Allen wrench right there. So since this is a nice car, I'm actually just going to zip those 3 little bolts out that hold that cover, take that cover, clean it up, put a little fresh coat of paint on it, just so that it stays decent looking. So get yourself a socket, I believe it's 10 mil, and just take those 3 off now. So the next thing we're going to be doing is getting the bolts. Now you can see the bolts come in from the back and into here. So I'm going to go ahead and spray this entire thing. The other side actually stuck pretty good. Took quite a bit of tapping on it and everything. This, no problem. That all comes off without any problem at all. But going to want to spray everything back here. Just got to get that axle nut off so we can kind of, when we pop the the bearing out, it just slides right off. I cheated. I had an 1.5 inches. I didn't have the right metric size. So I will post what size this is supposed to be so that you know for sure. But the 1.5 inches did spin it off without any damage. Looks good. Once that's off, you can just push the axle back, no problem. Next thing is going to be is to take, there's 4 bolts on the bearing. And so that takes, again, oops, where are we at? There it is. Another inverted Torx. This is an E16. An E16, and that's going to take those 4 bolts out from the back. All right, there's the 4 bolts out. Now, got to get this bearing off. Just start it, there you go. Just start to give it a few taps. You can see it's starting to move already. And I'm just taking a small hammer and just going around it, tapping it to get it out. Like I said, this bearing is junk, so I'm not worried about it. You gotta be careful. This is a steel housing for the bearing, but this spindle is actually an aluminum. So you'll tear up your aluminum spindle and your bearing will be fine, even though it's junk and you gotta replace it. So just be very careful. If you put something in there to tap on it, make sure it's flat and smooth on that side so that you don't do any damage to that aluminum, so everything goes back together and pinches up as it should. All right, if everything goes as it should, yep, there we go. And you can kind of see they get a little bit of corrosion around that edge. This one actually is a little bit cleaner than the other one, but I'll take a little wire brush and clean this out. When I put the new one back in, I'm just gonna put a little bit of anti-seize, make sure everything is nice and clean. If you do get a burr or something, sorry about that, if you get a burr or anything on here, take a flat file and be extremely careful. Just try to take just the burr off. Didn't do anything on this particular one. The other side did have a little burr where I nicked it with the chisel, and I just took it and lightly just took just the burr off without taking anything off the face. So just be super careful, like I say, with this aluminum. All right, after everything is cleaned up, I always just like to use a little bit of some type of anti-seize around that just to help it come back apart later on. Somebody's gonna have to change it. So might as well make it as easy as we can. All 4 bolts are started, but you can see I still left it nice and loose. Don't draw it in until you got all the bolts tight or snugged up, and do them, you know, back and forth, kind of a zigzag pattern. I always consider that good practice to do it that way, whether or not this bearing needs that. I couldn't find anything on that, at least on my little searches online real quick, but just, yeah, go back and forth, and the torque spec for that is 70 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these tightened up, get them torqued up, torque wrench, and then we'll move on to a couple other parts. That is all torqued down, and I just took a little bit of battery terminal grease, which kind of has a little bit of stuff in it to kind of stop that reaction between metals. And so I just give it a spray around. Can't hurt anything. Don't know if it helps, but whenever you got dissimilar metals, I think it's worth doing something. Got the nut just sitting on there. Got to tighten that down here in a little bit. I'll just snug it up and then torque it when the car's sitting on its wheels. Okay, our dust shield is back on, all nice and shiny and rust free. So that is good. We'll move on now to putting some of the other pieces back in. Don't know why I keep telling you that, because you know that's what we're going to do next. Okay, getting ready to put the caliper back on. One thing I always like to do is put a little anti-seize in behind it so that they come back off. The other thing is, be careful of this. You know, slot it, and drilled rotors go a certain way, a certain direction. So double check that you've got them on right. This is for the front passenger side, which is what I'm working on. So earlier I talked about leaving kind of everything together so you could see. So that's exactly what I did. Now I know that all of my new pads are right where they need to be, and the hardware is all in the right positions. So it gives you the best chance of success at having a good brake job. Make sure you put in your little retaining screw. That'll hold that up tight. So the next thing is get this new caliper on, and then it's time to pull that hose and swap it to the new one. Well, you can see everything is back on this side. We cleaned up our fittings up there, made sure everything was nice and clean so we could see any leaks. Got the hose all fitted nice and tight. Stuck a small piece of hose onto our caliper on our bleeder, and right there you can see she's dripping. So hopefully we have gotten a nice flush of some fluid through that, and that caliper is mostly full. So I'm gonna get the wheel back on this, torque this axle nut down, and kind of snug this back up, and then we'll have to come back and bleed this. But that is pretty much it for this brake job. Okay, one super important thing to remember, take this out before you put the tire back on. That way you can get in there and torque down that axle nut. So make sure you take that center cap off. Just tap it a little bit lightly from the back. They'll usually pop right out. Be careful as they get older, the plastic gets a little bit brittle. So just take your, don't whack on it. Just give it a little tap, it'll come out. Always remember, once it's back on the ground, go ahead, re-torque everything, doing it in a nice little star pattern. may have just went out of a little bit. Lock off. Okay, so that fits right through. Get it on there. So this is 148. I'll just do that one more time, make sure it's good. There it is. Take our little cap, and we're done. Well, that wraps this one up. Just doing the front brakes on this in this video. The rear are electronic parking brakes. So I'm going to do that as a separate video. If you want, come back and take a look at that. But overall, this was not too bad of a job. Did take a little bit longer than I'd hoped, but that's the way these things go. Anyway, still got to bleed this, add a little bit of fluid, but I need an assistant for that. So anyway, hey, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit a like. If there's something you want to say, put it down in the comments. I do like to look at it. And thanks for watching.